I was wondering. There it is. Never mind. Aren't you guys pretty? What do you think? I did not know about Rose, her passing. We were truly blessed to have her live here in Fort Walton Beach. Rose and Ernie Lopez. Ernie was the gardener that built the gardens in Haifa. And Rose started out in Wilmette as Glenford Mitchell's secretary. And when Glenford Mitchell got elected to the House of Justice, he brought Rose to Haifa with him to be his secretary there. She said it never happened. She became the secretary to Adib Taherzadeh and one other member. But Rose said that when she got to Haifa, she found that none of the policies and practices were standardized. So each secretary of each House of Justice member would have a different reporting form, different policy, different everything. So one of the things that Rose did is she standardized all the procedures in Haifa. And then she wrote the policy manual for the Universal House of Justice. One of the policies that she wrote into the manual was that when you reach 70 years old, you have to retire. So when she and Ernie reached 70 years old, they had to retire. So the week before they left, the Universal House of Justice had a special luncheon for Rose to celebrate her and to thank her. And one of the House of Justice members stood up during the luncheon and said, "How is the Universal House of Justice going to function without Rose to tell us what to do?" So this is the kind of person that we just lost, and it's heartbreaking. I was able to sit down with a video camera and microphone and record part of their story. So I asked them a number of times to do it more, but now I've lost that opportunity. So I guess today's presentation is about the oneness of religion and comparative religion. And there is a program in Fort Walton Beach at the University of West Florida called the Center for Lifelong Learning, CLL for short. And it's a continuing ed program for people that just like to learn. And they offer about 50 different types of classes, everything from cooking to genealogy to history to comparative religion. So I used to go to the comparative religion class, and it's a class where you have a different speaker from a different church or group come in every week and speak. And I went to this class one day, and the CLL board members were out in the lobby lamenting that the teacher who was teaching the class was retiring. And they were wondering who could step in and take the class. And I just said, well, I'll do it. So they said, okay. And so I've been doing that class for 3 years now. So one of the benefits of this is that I now have to reach out to the different churches, religious groups, and whatever, and try to meet these people, get a broad sampling, a broad diversity of, I've had all kinds of Christian speakers, I've had Hindu, several Buddhist, atheist, Sunni, Shia, rabbis, conservative, Orthodox, liberal. And the fascinating thing about it is they're so appreciative that I would give them this opportunity to speak to a group that they would normally get to come in contact with. So they actually like me. So, but I told them I would teach the class under one condition, that I would be allowed to teach a second class. And the second class is titled Messianic Prophecies of the World's Great Religions. And it's a comparative religion class, and what I do in the class, and these are all non-Baha'is that I'm talking to, I will show them Hinduism, Buddhism, Native American, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and I will show them what they basically teach. And then I give them quizzes, and one of the things I do is I'll put a quote up on the board and have them try to guess what religion it's from. And most of the time they can't guess. So the point of that being, if they all teach basically the exact same things, what's the problem? A lot of the differences are just cultural, or teachings that were designed for that specific people, that specific time in history. So by doing that, last year in Royal Falcon School, I taught a class on Isaiah. And the story of Isaiah is Baha'u'llah's life story, point by point. And this is one of the modules I teach in my class. And what I do is show the class what Isaiah predicted would happen. The Redeemer coming to Israel from the east, brings a new book, renews religion, comes to Akka and Mount Carmel. It's all in Isaiah. And the end of Isaiah, it says that all nations and tongues will come together before the Lord. And not to be punished, not to be destroyed, but as one family, the one fold and the one shepherd. This has been foretold in all the religions. So that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about this morning. Friday, Kim mentioned that it is Ronnie Smith's 44th wedding anniversary, Friday night. And she's my wife, so it's also mine, but as Kim says, that she gets all the credit for it. Amazing endurance. But we got married in a Roman Catholic church. She's Polish Roman Catholic. The family is Roman Catholic to the bone for generations. So we did the usual meetings with the priest beforehand. And his evaluation, when he was through talking with us, was that he would give our marriage 2 years. And then it's now 44 years later. I don't know if he thought that by saying that it would kind of endear me to him and make me want to be a Catholic. But in the Baha'i faith, it says something, there's something that quenches the light of the spirit and extinguishes the light of the soul. Do you know what that is? Okay, that's one of them. What's the other one? Criticism. So that's a little bit what we're going to be talking about this morning also. We always hear about the backbiting one, but not so much about the criticism. So we got married October 31st, Halloween, 1970. And in June, a few months later, at the time, one of the problems the priest had with me is that I was from kind of a lukewarm Protestant background. My parents weren't that interested in religion, but occasionally took me to church. It wasn't a huge part of my life. And I actually had gotten to the point where I was probably an atheist and was pretty good at arguing against religion. Well, that all ended one night. In late June of 1971, I had a dream. And in the dream, a voice said to me, stop worrying about the religions. Stop worrying about them fighting each other. Stop worrying about where the world is headed. Prepare yourself, the answer is coming. And I woke up and thought, well, that's something. And I remember telling people, the answer is coming. I don't know what it is. But at the time we lived on the north side of Chicago. And for some reason, I felt that I should go to the pretty building, just a few miles up the road, the white dome-shaped one. I didn't know anything about Baha'i. And at the time, I didn't care anything about religion. But I remember going upstairs and being handed a pamphlet and reading teachings like the equality of men and women and the elimination of racism and these kind of things. And I thought, well, these are remarkable teachings for a religion, the oneness of religion. And I said, but that still wouldn't have been enough. And I went downstairs, and downstairs in Foundation Hall, they had a progressive revelation display. Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad. You remember seeing it? I've got a photograph of it. I should have brought it. But at the end, it says Baha'u'llah. I remember that hit me like lightning. I said, that's it. I don't know what that is, but that's it. And so I cornered, it's actually Rich Gorinsky. I don't know if you know Rich. You know Rich? Yeah. Rich wrote the book on the Tablet of Ahmad. And I talked with Rich for a couple of hours, and Caswell Ellis was there. And Caswell asked me if I wanted to become a Baha'i, and I said, there's got to be something crazy in this. No. And so it took us another month or so. So part of the reason I tell that story is to remind you that the teaching the faith and the Baha'i faith is essentially a mystical experience. We're not trying to sell used cars here or, push things on people that they really don't want to buy. And that people actually are being prepared to receive the message from us. And I know so many stories that, well, everybody knows these kind of stories. I'm sure there's people here that have the story. There was one time we were at a meeting, I think there's about 12 or 15 people there, and most of them had some kind of experience where they were prepared by a dream or a vision or something like that. So what I try to encourage people to do is expect that. When you go out talking to people, and expect that they've already been prepared. I guess there's a story I wasn't going to tell, but I guess I will. It was in Deepen magazine. Used to be Deepen magazine years back. It's a story about a Baha'i teaching team went out into some neighborhood, and they were talking to people, and they weren't really having all that much success, and it was starting to get dark, and so they decided to quit for the day and head back to the car. And as they're walking back to the car, there's an old couple sitting in lawn chairs in the front yard, and they kind of asked, one more, or you want to just knock off and go, or they go, oh, one more. So they went over and talked to the old couple, and they walked up and says, have you heard of Baha'u'llah? And the man jumped up and says, is this someone's name? And they said, yes. And he said, come in the house. So the story was that they would read and study the Bible, and they knew that the Lord was coming with a new name at an unexpected time. And they both had a dream where Jesus appeared to them and says, in 3 days, someone will come and tell you my new name. So these people had been out teaching all afternoon, hadn't had much success, were heading back home, wondering, one more? Should we stop and tell them? And so that's kind of what I encourage people. People want to hear the story. People want to hear what we have to say. I was going to tell a story about a FOF. We used to live in Carbondale, Illinois, the home of Southern Illinois University, and one of the community members, one of the Baha'is in town, was Abir Majid, and just a wonderful friend. We still correspond, well, this week. And this was back in the mid-90s when we all first got internet, and the internet provider gave us a free web page. And keeping in mind, Bill Sears used to always say, vie with each other for spiritual distinction. So I thought, well, let's do some vying here. So I went to Feast, and I think there was only 3 men there that night, but one was Abir. And we're all kind of computer semi-savvy. And so I offered the challenge to, let's all write a web page and see what happens. And Abir and I were the only 2 that actually wrote one. But Abir wrote the Baha'i Islam webpage. And Abir was born in Baghdad, Iraq. And he used to live just a few blocks from Hafaf's family. And because his mother is Hafaf's sister. So, so Abir's webpage has had in the neighborhood of 5 million hits now. So just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I wrote a webpage that was inspired by Bill Sears' book, Thief of the Night, and it's messianic. It's the Baha'i Prophecy Fulfilled webpage, and I actually took the counter off it because they kept resetting the counter when they did server maintenance. I'm guessing 5 million hits. So I routinely get emails from Kazakhstan and South Africa and whatever. Just recently got an invitation to go to Turkey, and the guy said, would you come to Turkey? And he said he wanted to sit in some of the classes, and I said, well, how about if I bring it there? And he said, okay. But in the CLL classes, and a lot of them I've videotaped, and they're on YouTube, so you can see the classes. So I lead non-Baha'is basically through progressive revelation, and to a great extent, these are things that they have never seen before and never heard of before. And Hooper Dunbar recently taught a school in Singapore, I think it was, and it's on YouTube. And one of the things he said when he first started the class in Singapore was, I'm a former Universal House of Justice member, and of course there are many people who are very knowledgeable. However, he encouraged the people in the class to still investigate truth for yourselves. You know, this is my understanding, you need to find your own understanding. So I was going to show you, this is one of the presentations I showed my class at the very beginning. So who is Theodore Geisel? Do you know who that is? Dr. Seuss. Okay. This is his entire commencement address to the 1977 class of Wake Forest College. And the title of his presentation is My Uncle Terwilliger on the Art of Eating Popovers. This is what he said. My uncle ordered popovers from the restaurant's bill of fare, and then when they were served, he regarded them with a penetrating stare. Then he spoke great words of wisdom as he sat there on that chair. To eat these things, said my uncle, you must exercise great care. You may swallow down what's solid, but you must spit out the air. And as you partake of the world's bill of fare, that's darn good advice to follow. Do a lot of spitting out of hot air and be careful what you swallow. So this is my introduction to my class, and I encourage them to think for themselves. I tell them this is my understanding. It's not the only understanding. It may not even be the correct understanding. So, and I encourage people to speak up and to talk, and to challenge and to disagree. That's fine too. One of the wonderful things about the technology today is that this is an iPad. These programs, these presentations are so easy to do. And you can email them, you can post them on web pages. Anybody in the world could download this, put it on their own iPad, and anybody in the world could give this exact presentation without any preparation. It's all done for you. And with the new iPhones, you can actually use your phone as a remote to control this. So you can walk around the room, hit your phone, and it'll mirror what this is doing. So you can even see. So the technology is amazing. You can get iPads for either used ones or reconditioned or whatever for almost no money. So this is kind of our marching orders. This was read yesterday, and I'm so struck by what it says. See me in my lowliness and weakness, occupied with the greatest undertaking, determined to raise thy word amongst the masses, and to spread thy teachings among thy peoples. How can I succeed unless thou assist me? This is the tablet of the southern states. This is Abdul Baha's marching orders for us. And it's the only one that mentions the masses. This is kind of the theme of the class. Of course, Baha'u'llah said, there can be no doubt whatever that the peoples of the world, whatever race or religion, derive their inspiration from one heavenly source and are subjects of one God. So in my class to these non-Baha'is, I freely mix in quotes from Baha'u'llah. And I don't explain them. I'm in a kind of a situation there where I can't really overtly be a Baha'i, but I can certainly tell them what Baha'u'llah says and show how it compares and relates and agrees with the other religions. So of course, Shoghi Effendi said that divine revelation is a progressive process, that all the great religions of the world are divine in origin. So everybody we saw on the panel last night, all divine in origin, we're all one family. They're a little bit different, but we're mostly alike. So their basic principles are in complete harmony, their aims and purposes are one and the same, and that their teachings are but facets of one truth, and their functions are complementary. They're not identical, they're complementary. That they differ only in their non-essential aspects of their doctrines, and that their missions represent successive stages in the spiritual evolution of human society. And then Baha'u'llah tells us, how do we relate to people? And it's a fairly long quote, but a kindly approach and loving behavior towards the people are the first requirements of teaching the cause. The believer must carefully listen to whatever a person has to say, even though his talk consists only of vain imaginings and blind repetitions of the opinions of others. Farther down, consideration, respect, and love encourage people to listen and not to force them to respond with hostility. So how many times have you ever had a discussion with someone from another religion where it turns into an argument? I used to, I don't much anymore. I'll just tell them that when two religions argue, they're both wrong. So if you're willing to share your viewpoint, I've been willing to share my viewpoint without me trying to change you or me trying to convert you. In fact, oftentimes I tell people that the Baha'i faith may not be for you, but at least you should know about it. Kind of take all the ulterior motives out of it, tell them, I'm not going to try to convert you. I'm not going to try to defeat you in argument. And what that does is kind of opens, people relax, they know that they're not going to be manipulated. And as again, like we saw last night, we're not the only group that has all the truth, so we need to work together. Abdul Baha, this is the way the master taught. Consider the way in which the master teaches the people. He listens very carefully to the most hollow and senseless talk. He listens so intently that the speaker says to himself, he is trying to learn from me. Then the master gradually and very carefully, by means that the other person does not perceive, puts him on the right path and endows him with a fresh power of understanding. I had a conversation one time with a woman who was the personal secretary to the bishop of the Episcopal Church in her town. And we got talking about the Baha'i faith, and she says, oh, I can't be a Baha'i. I work for the guy that runs the Episcopal Church. Well, that night she had a dream, and in the dream, a bearded man in a cream-colored robe appeared to her, and which she said gave her the most warm, safe, welcoming hug that she's ever had in her life. And she said his robes smelled sweet and spicy. Isn't that a quote from the writings? So I thought, well, okay, you don't really have to do much there. Just sit back and wait and let the process unfold. And she's one of the ones I told her that, you may not actually be intended to ever be a Baha'i, and there are people that can do more for the Baha'i faith who are not Baha'is than some that are. So make a long story short, she enrolled, and she was sitting on her front porch, and hummingbirds would come and hover in front of her, and birds were circling in the house, and then she had a dream. And these things happen. They happen to me. I know they happen. And a lot of times all we have to do is get out of the way. Help guide it maybe a little bit, but I guess I could have ended with that one. But I'm just going to show you one of the presentations that I teach to my class. As you can see here, I teach about the numbers in Daniel, Native American prophecies, Isaiah, just the story of religion, God, Hinduism, who did Jesus claim to be, Mormon prophecies, the names of God. So my students are, of course, primarily from Christian background. And as I said, I usually would put a quote up on the board and have them try to guess what religion it's from. So this is the presentation that I give to them on faith and works. So here's a quote. Who's it from? The Apostle Paul. For it's by grace you have been saved through faith, not by works, so that no one can boast. So recognizing Jesus and becoming a Christian is a gift. It's not because of anything that you did, and you don't have to do anything to receive it, is what he's saying here. And this is the one that's quoted by Christians, just, you're saved by faith and not by works. So that's the Apostle Paul in Ephesians. Ali is here. The last letter was from Ephesians. Ali, sitting in the front row there, is from Izmir, which is Ephesus, which is where the letter was written to. I would love to go to Ephesus and see where Paul was. Okay. Ephesus is where the Temple of Diana was. One of the wonders of the 7 wonders of the ancient world was in Ephesus, the Temple of Diana, Temple of Artemis. And there's a story of the Apostle Paul. He was in Ephesus, and he was teaching, and the people who were making their living off the temple got concerned that he was going to convert the people that were buying their wares, their little idols and whatever. And there was a riot. And so in the Bible it says they marched through the streets shouting, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." So the Apostle Paul had to leave town for his life. And there were a number of other times where Paul was harassed, and there was one time he was beaten until their arms got tired, and they thought he was dead. And to a great extent, as Baha'is, we have to kind of expect that too. So who said, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling? It's the Apostle Paul. So salvation is a gift from God. You don't have to do anything to get it. But then he says, when you get it, work it out. You have to have works. So a lot of Christians will say, well, works don't matter. And here Paul says, well, yeah, they do. It does matter what you do. So that's, in some ways, could appear to be a contradiction, but it's really not. It's just different aspects of the same thing. So who said, I am he who searches the minds and hearts, and I will give to each one of you according to your works. According to your works. That's the Apostle John in the book of Revelation. So you will be rewarded according to what you've done in your life. So works do matter. Character does matter. It does matter what you do. It does matter how you relate to each other. It does matter that you adhere to a certain ethical standard. It does matter that you have faith. Who said, many do not know that we are here in this world to live in harmony. Those who know this do not fight against each other. Anybody? Guess. Let me hear some. Buddha. Okay. It's Buddha. All right. There you go. So this is the kind of quiz that I give to my classes to kind of broaden their horizons a little bit. You have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, and do good to those that hate you. So to do good even to your enemies. Of course, that's Jesus in Matthew. For those who believe and work righteousness, for them shall be gardens of eternity. Who said that? Who? Muhammad. God does not accept belief, it is not expressed in deed, and does not accept deed if it does not conform to belief. So you have to have faith and you have to exhibit works. And these are every religion has these themes. So Christians like to talk about the Antichrist. The Antichrist of the book of Revelation. The word Antichrist does not appear in the book of Revelation. It does appear in the writings in one of the letters of John, and John tells you who the Antichrist is. Antichrist, the word Antichristos, just means someone who's against Jesus, against the Christ. Dear children, as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, and even now many Antichrists have come. They have already appeared. They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us. But you have an anointing, so you are all Christ, from the Holy One, and all of you know the truth. So according to John, who is the Antichrist? Yes, people who were following a false form of Christianity. They used to be part of John's group. They were apostates, and they were led off the true path. And so the Antichrist is false Christians. And it also says it's anybody that says that Jesus is not the Christ. So the word Antichrist does not appear in the book of Revelation. So all the Left Behind series stuff, the new movie that just came out, it's all baloney. I even go through, with the Left Behind series, it's the story of the rapture and flying away into heaven. I talk about that too, and it actually has a totally different meaning if you actually read what it says. I might be able to get to it. Let me just finish this part. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So Jesus is saying here that even his followers, some of his followers, he's going to say, no, you're not it. Depart from me, I never knew you, ye that work iniquity. So faith and works is important. Who said the essence of faith is fewness of words and abundance of deeds? Everybody's hand. So again, without any introduction, I just put quotes like this, and these are two people that have never, I think in many cases, never heard of Baha'u'llah. Before the most recent semester started, they had a dinner where all the teachers came and met with the board, the CLL board. And the president of the board kind of took me aside and she said, you know, there was a religious group last semester that wanted to have a class about their church in the program. And we told them that we don't want to have any one class, any one church represented. That comparative religion is okay. And then I told her that this is what I do. I show how all the religions essentially teach the same thing. And of course the group that wanted to have the class was Mormon. So who said this? If a man speaks many holy words but does not live according to those words, this thoughtless man cannot enjoy a life of holiness. You have to live what you believe. Who said that? Buddha again. Bless them that persecute you, bless and curse not. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense no man evil for evil. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. It's the Apostle Paul again. So, Abdu'l-Baha spoke about the Apostle Paul in Paris Talks, and he said that in his early life, Paul was an enemy of Christ, whilst later he became what? His most faithful servant. Abdu'l-Baha calls the Apostle Paul Jesus' most faithful servant. And if you actually read the writings of Paul and not what you hear in church, in the greater doctrinal statements, he's identical with Abdu'l-Baha. The Apostle Paul is actually one of Baha'is best friends. In fact, you can easily just, I can go into that if you want to see some of it, but I saw some eyebrows go up there. And this is just a passage that I took a screenshot just to show you that I'm not just making this stuff up. But, and I thought that was kind of an appropriate way to. The cartoon, it's St. Peter, the man's at the pearly gates. St. Peter, of course, has the keys of heaven. And it says, you were a believer, yes, but you skipped the part about not being a jerk about it. But, and I've encountered plenty of people that have treated me inappropriately, and there's probably a number of times where I've treated others inappropriately. So it's a constant process of refinement. And so what thoughts do you have about this? I'd like to get some feedback. Again, this is, the classes average 30. The comparative religion class, where I have the speakers come in, last semester was 42. So, Merdad, is he here? Merdad was my speaker 3 weeks ago. So this semester in the comparative religion class, where I have the speakers come in, The first speaker was a female Presbyterian minister, and I asked her, at what point in time did the Presbyterian Church start ordaining women? And she said in the 1970s, which seems like yesterday to me. But my next speaker was a rabbi from Jerusalem. I guess one of the things that he said that I didn't know was that someone asked him about abortion in Judaism, and he said the Jewish teaching, or that's his understanding of it, was that when a child is born, it's not even a person till about 4 to 6 weeks after it's born. I guess because of the infant mortality rate and these kind of things. So he says we don't really go much farther beyond that. My next speaker was a Shia Muslim from Pakistan, and it's interesting to try to find these speakers because, you know, we live in ultra-conservative Florida Panhandle, and there is a mosque in Fort Walton. It's a little tiny storefront thing. I kept trying to find Muslims, and I couldn't find them. So one Friday, I walked into the mosque, and probably 30 to 40 people sitting there, mostly dark curly hair and olive complexion, and every head in the room went, look, we just walked in. And so then I tried to explain to them that I was trying to find a speaker for comparative religion class. I couldn't find anybody that spoke good enough English even to get the idea across. So the women meet separately in another room. They had to bring an American woman who's Muslim forward to talk to me to find out that I wanted a speaker. So that was interesting. So because of these kind of circumstances, I'm now really good friends with Shias and Sunnis in Fort Walton Beach. My Shia speaker said, he's from Pakistan, and he said that Iran is probably the most tolerant form of Islam that there is. And my first thought was, I know quite a few Baha'is might disagree with that, but then I was thinking, well, if that's true, that's really sad, because my next speaker was a Sunni Muslim, and he's a medical doctor in Crestview, and he actually takes off the afternoon from his practice to come to this class to speak about Sunni Islam. And he was my fourth speaker in this series. 5 minutes? Okay, okay. I thought I had an hour and a half. Okay, never mind, I'm sorry. Anyway, he said, I asked him if anybody else ever offers him to come speak. And he says, no, you're the only one. So I thought, well, that's interesting. So this is the only opportunity he gets to speak to Americans about Islam. And he told the story about his pilgrimage, how he was there with 3 million people. And he said he hated it because it was so crowded and everybody's pushing each other and shoving each other. And I didn't cover, and I guess the next speaker was Merdad, and I don't see him here. Of course, Merdad's from Iran, and he was telling the story about how he grew up in tolerant Iran, and that people with badges and guns would come and beat him up. So he moved to a smaller village outside of Tehran, and they would follow him there and come beat him up. So then he decided that maybe it was time to leave. So this was in the mid-1970s. I've got a female chaplain coming. I've got, let's see. I guess I'm running out of time. So I guess one thing I would encourage you to do, be aware of opportunities. This whole thing, teaching in this continuing ed program, just kind of dropped in my lap. And now I'm one of the old-timers now. So I've been teaching the class for several years, and the response to it is just remarkable. I'm taking a class in the morning. Someone two other people are teaching it. They're both PhDs. And the class is Greek and Roman pagan religion and how it impacted the early church. So I'm sitting in that class, and these are both PhDs, and the one woman has a master's in theology and is actually a Methodist minister. And I've been able to show them things that just, their jaws dropped about early Christian history. So the final class next week, they're going to have a 3-panel discussion, and they've asked me to join them in the discussion. And they've actually asked me to give one of these presentations in the class. The presentation is from Justin Martyr, who is a Christian, and he was one of the most prominent Christians of the 2nd century. In 157 AD, he wrote a letter to Caesar in an attempt to get Caesar to stop the persecution of the Christians. And in the letter, Justin Martyr compares Jesus to the Roman gods. And he says, in the fact, Caesar was persecuting the Christians because the Romans thought the Christians were pagan, were atheists. They did not believe in the Roman gods, so therefore they were atheists. So that's why they were being persecuted. The Romans believed that all blessings and benefit come from the gods. Anybody who doesn't believe in them brings doom upon you, so you have to be eliminated. So Justin Martyr was writing the letter to Caesar, and he says that in the fact that Jesus and the Roman gods he names are Bacchus, Asclepius, Perseus, the emperors, he names several of them. And the fact that they were all virgin births, they were all sons of God, they all suffered variously, they all were killed, they all were resurrected, and they all ascended into heaven. Why do you persecute us? Because we believe the same things. I showed this to the 2 people in the class, and their eyeballs just went like this. And this is a smoking gun. This is what we've been looking for. So, but again, to be aware of opportunities. If there are continuing education classes in your area, get involved. There's a interfaith group in Fort Walton Beach. So what we saw last night. But people want to have this. People want to have what Baha'is have, the Baha'i contribution. So just be aware of what you can do. I guess I've got one other final quote here, and then I'll stop. But this is it. Do you realize in what dispensation you exist? Have you not read in the Holy Scriptures that at the consummation of the ages there would dawn a day, the sum total of all past days? This is the day when the Lord of hosts has come on the clouds of glory. This is the day in which the inhabitants of the world shall enter under the tent of the Word of God. This is the day whose real sovereign is His Highness the Almighty. This is the day when the east and the west shall embrace each other like unto 2 lovers. War and contention will be forgotten, and nations and governments shall enter into an eternal bond of amity and conciliation. This century is the fulfillment of the promised century, the dawn of the appearances of the glorious visions of past prophets and sages. Do you realize in what dispensation you exist? Do you realize who you are? Thank you.